Hey everybody, welcome to the season finale of the Segue reading series. I'm Lonely Christopher. I've had an amazing time this year, hosting the show with James Sherry. There's two more seasons for the programming year forthcoming. Artist Space is hosting the next season, and Future Poem the season after that. We're glad you're here. We're glad you braved the weather. If you're watching through our famous live stream, please remember to donate $5, and the details will be on the screen during the interval. We are going to begin with Jimin Seo, and I am going to deliver the introduction. Jimin Seo was born in Korea and is a classically trained pianist who began writing creatively after an injury sustained while practicing a concerto. It was all an accident, he says, of becoming a poet, which of course is the best and possibly only way to become one. Ossia, Seo's debut poetry collection, won the Changes Book Prize. Merriam-Webster tells me that the word ossia derives from the Italian, meaning let it be, and much like the word segue, is used as a term of musical direction, meaning that an alternative passage may be used. The book is such an alternative passage into the life of an ailing translator and his adored young friend. The mentor figure represents Richard Howard, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and critic who was an important translator of Balzac, Baudelaire, Barthes, Gide, Proust, Sartre, and the children's book, The Little Prince, and much else. The multiplicity of experience is engorged exponentially when two disparate spheres collide. Ossia uses dramatic monologues or something resembling epistolary address to create a conversation, the translation of one through another, extending or explicating a previous relationship using poetry, or making the point that the connection between two people isn't severed when one dies. The poet finds a place, as Jay Gao notes, where the lyric catches between the art of living and the living of art. With deft complexity, the poet weaves various incongruous threads together, the translation of French to English, of English to Korean, and back again and across and beside. The poet observes and is observed by a personality gorgeously crystallized in text. Richard is having trouble sleeping. He takes his pills. He contemplates selling his library. He looks back. He is aging and things are changing, asking, what else are hospitals good for, if not to tell your friends, time is not my friend? The poet, as necromancer, relives the conditions of loss, asking, how do I remember anything truer than the fiction of how your body is a red garden? There is something gentle and symphonic about Seo's allowance for sincerity to hyper-express the intensity of relation. A white man in his senior years being haunted by his earlier life. Another man from somewhere else, boyish, in the prime of life, haunted by his childhood and the early loss of his mother. A wise wizard and a little prince, learning from each other. I like it the best when they both get a little horny. And while this intergenerational affiliation is the core of the project, it is also the soil from which a whole garden grows, the point from which alternative passages are followed. The book features an interplay between the English and Korean languages that can only be fully understood by a reader of both tongues. The poet navigates the intersections of entangled constructs that interface but never fully merge. The poet says, that's the experience of growing up as a Korean person and an American person and a Southern person. In Jacksonville, Florida, everything has to be coded. My queerness, my Koreanness. As much as I would like to say the American and the Korean intertwine, they don't. This book is about the music of that which doesn't intertwine, a song of contradistinction through mutuality. As Rosanna Young-O notes, the fugal composition of these poems requires that they be read together as each poem acts as an individual melody in harmony with the rest. The innovations are formally exacting, beyond logic or meaning. The poet presents branching directions from a sense of loss and confusion, all chemically fusing into something recovered and brilliant. Let us hear him. Please welcome the amazing Jimin Seo.
Thank you, Lonely. That was so beautiful. I feel like I don't have to read. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm just going to read straight through, about 20 minutes. I'll read from the book and some new work interspersed. My friend, no one tells you your mortal enemy is yourself. Waking up to the middle distance between the marriage bed and the fridge lamp lit to a soft red glow so I can ford any river, pass the brain fog in the forest of my subconscious, slip 2 silvers to the bridge troll to walk back into the palace of my lover sound asleep. Why his pillow is the scent of my loss and the quiet rustle of bedding dread. I sit softly at my desk and hope light breaks sooner so I am less lonely. Why do we wake up in the middle of the night when no one wants it to happen? What friends will take my calls when there is nobody home to hear my incessant ringing? Who can pick up? My love's soft matter is tired. Entire, an assassin fangs his noumena and captures the night air. Strategy, explosions in the city of my beloved I have never visited. Sleep in the soft booms of our apartment, the conical stereos below us, waves. In the soft matter of their dreams, waves flood the salted waste of their home. In real time, what is home in the death field, the fatigue? I watch them empty the canister, coffee grounds into machine, the slow drip of hot waking, burning the house awake in waves. I watch the imperial clocks, comical audio bodies ticking work and fatigues, how time dies in enemy bodies too slowly. Mine ticking along the axis of document and witness, I dislike it. TV, myself and the self-same mind of ticking, explosions setting off the soft matter of my love's fatigue in waves. Olives, oranges, milk spoils in the fridge slowly. My love and their slow concentric shocks, shampoo aching their curls, steam in the cubicle of their waist, rivers drifting to sea. What is it to wash clean clinging, waste on the rims of bowls, while my love bathes in waves? Water runs its missives down, their ears listing the impossible rains, the too late trickle of their voice wetting for the city of their beloveds falling too late, their ears rimming crypt noise as rain too late wet salt arriving, home soil and dead merging, impotent manufactured waves. To motion, hands speaking, submerged in waste, what is already wasted, resoiled in a body, washing its face in a blank bowl, water circling, history, something like it, like itself, wasted. How much time do I have left to wash between my thighs, pity the form washed up in the bath, repent the piss stain merging into the greater body when the husband departing his job, departing kisses his husband, kisses his sons, takes his chair to slice his meat, choicest cut on his plate, kisses his own red lips to a dead animal, clean as he can possibly be, to receive a lover as filthy as a used rag. Sell me your eyes, your discount orange at the pit stop, candy from the pronged inns at the aisles, anodyne fruit, car bearer and fag at the inn stop, counterchild, counting your meticulous icons, thumbnail to rind, coined eye ride your pithy white gown, incarnadine fruit, swell, petrol, stink, your lover high for once is swell. Were you interested in living this way to the sweet intrusion of strategy? This way, pissed up, this way. 빌린 집안에서 빚을 내려놓았다. 입술에다 소독칠하고 하늘도 입안으로 뭉겨나왔다. 노래 없이 떠오르는 시간도 땅속에서 쥐어짜는 기름처럼 한 방울 한 방울 어두운 내면으로 모셔보냈다. 안 보이면 그만이겠지. 보여도 그만이겠지. 빌린 방 겉에서 불빛이 꽃처럼 피어나겠지. 그 내면에서 사랑하는 남성이 내 빚도 갚아주겠지. 하늘을 누벼가는 그 남자 둘이 내 어두운 몸 안으로 걷어온 시간도 풀어줄 수 있겠지. 한 방울 한 방울 그 두 몸 안에서 쥐어짜는 기름도 내 몸 안으로 호수처럼 모이겠지. Richard, to do nothing at last is to say the world is at war again. The world is at war again, and the guns point west to east, and east to west, and northwest of love, war points inward. And each family scatters like dust brushed off an old friend, my old friend. My love bursts from dust, and the book I found is never as I left it. Remember it, the spine broken from love, and the hand that strokes it. My friend, I've made up my mind to climb up the ladder myself. The Brits are hiding behind the French and the Germans in a ditch below. An entire shelf for Proust and his acolytes, and Rilke can tip his prophetic hat to the Italians. The Russians and Americans on the same case. Save them the trouble of crossing the Pacific to steal from each other. The Aramaic, Arabic, and Hebrew, God only knows what I'll do with. Put them out next to Freud, Jung, and Melanie Klein. What will I do about the Chinese? God, when did I become a diplomat? The art books, you say. Put them on the very bottom shelf. Art does something, at last, a counterweight. My friend, you want to know how it feels? Why so much red in my life, as if to mirror blood running in my body? What counts for an interior paramour when my spirit versus my flesh becomes sport? Who keeps score when I buy red camellias and steal a holly from my landlord's planter? My dear, if I'm put on thinners and a clatter of pills governs my body's betrayal, shouldn't I room in red exuberance of what my riches read aloud before I became this hollow? Who knows what will go first? Age makes carrion and mind shrinks to a peephole, and the spirit, a precise science, burns in the nether ether. The soft slippage of pink time, wet to retreat soft through a back door. The same room filled with friends congenial to dog habits, pining for their partners, the singular and lonely brackish air touched too much by my wet habits of sex. Wet flecks on their ocular orbits spit bleary icons of my same impotent doggish desires. My mouth, dry-rimmed to enter already this quarter-cut century, its urgent pink polychromy. Black, my crude lake, my self-same dissatisfactions of life, this way too much, too late, enough, pink wet, just enough. Just out a borrowed room, I see lamplight bloom, a scrim-lined film. The man I love pays off my debt, unravels into shadow, two men converging my debt into love. Sympathetic time, black drop, oil slick, lake pool black in my body. Is it music, my breath spun out regular in time, oil harvest, mine, black drop, black drop? Is it touch if I can't buy it? Welcome to my body. I borrow a house, settle my debts, stain my lips in isopropyl, still red, black hole, warp sky, dimes. Always to a ceremony of waste they arrive, my friends. 도망치는 갯소리로 흐트러 놓은 나의 친구들의 구름. Seeing too much. 그 물통 안에서 뭐를 내려놓을 수 있을까? Of my past, two dogs. 갯소리, 갯소리, 갯소리. The door just passed. Kissing. 가솔린 떠먹는 개 같은 나. You're not there as a matter of course. You carry the box you dust in. You kick the dog wayside, no telling what's worse. The damage you carry or damage picked clean from the teeth and spat out. What is hurt when your own animal yelps and retreats to a corner of the room? What bears better its knives and cleans a bone than your own cruel fangs? You animal, you master of damage, you bad dog. What light comes through this minimal heaven to rattle the dustbin you're dogged in? All your weight slung into this white hole. Where have you been this whole time? Where? Fullness halved in the cigarette block of wagecraft. Once my orbital lots manufactured malfeasance. All my life, I have been the price of gas. What is it watching, my friends? Me summoned in your image, holding my hose, petrol at the station, filling your concussive vehicle, switched off like a sick dog, all the same prismatic lifeblood in the veins of our sick automatons. I too am working to kill myself more slowly, kicking the tire animal, driving into the next synthetic sun just enough. Cubical fluorescence of a virginal rube mid-cult. What friendship is guilty if we are not in it? Too late, as if this century hangs on a too hard banging of wet teeth, ill-fitting wedged their mouths, unable to seal what lovers fail to conceal. Two tongues wetting each and none other only, their eyes blind to Rudding's failure to dramatize a human kiss. One body bearing its crude substitute. Siphoning petrol from the lexicon automaton. We have seen lovers like this, a drive-off poverty, car by car, to make up for, automatic, to revenge, to recover, loss. The sun sinks like a fluorescent hole wedged by a wet, flat tongue. A neighboring flame my waist chokes, pink shot in a home borrowed too late. Come, snot, piss worth of time. A pinwheel spins yet another rotation. Revolutions bent over, another round, soft slippage of wet time. My friend, you've rolled out the gold carpet. What else are hospitals good for, if not to tell your friends time is not my friend? Tell me to waste more of it on you. Bring me a pair of socks I'll darn for fun, a satchel of plums from that street vendor, the largest umbrella I can fan out to block the ghastly white light in Eden, Texas. Do I explain my doddering, pocked as my brain is by the friction of casting after my own name? I catch what light slips me, the name of a fruit as color, the good taste of purple, a visitor's too friendly voice, as if I too am divided into fractions. I won't remember your name either, my dear friend. You read me poems, mine and yours warped into a pain I feel gladly to remember. We were translating L'Éducation Sentimentale, and I called it a school for feelings. Bach's fourth French sarabande turned its repeat, and Moreau just betrayed Cécile with a kiss. A body's betrayal is better with affection. I am at last feeling. School is out. See you. There, I lent myself out, bloodline riding here and after, a boat is its empty seat hiding my time. All of me on Blood River ride, dirtying like an indefatigable plastic bag, planet brushing planet, star drift down river. Blood foam on my lips hang, ideas of a brain clouding thunder, split over the life of a single grain of sand, swallowing wave after wave to seize. What is beauty in this, to steal past the heart tolls, to drift into a brain for its own ideas of thunder, bomb empire behind to leave my own lamp bright lit. Pour me down a clear glass of brightly filtered brandy, my liver pulped, pathetic, filtering garbage as if it is its own person. What is it I've ever done right in this life? I have borrowed a good body, borrowed the moon, some light. Never have I ever ridden my blood ties. I am sorry I have borrowed your time. Sorry, I am sorry. 열어주세요. 열만 올려주세요. Behind the paper door, lamplight blooms like my birthday moon. 19 shadows converged into 19 days, man and horse, their sudden coitus coupling my odd body catching eidolons. Centaur wisdom watching my lover's sodden gait, picture man running the gray distance on a strange horse bareback. Moon-wet hole, horse mane, black pool and red glow suspend, rose and fire are one, hardly. Boat borrowed money, orange flowers, white sprouting from my head. Petal drift, hair mane, elsewhere matchlight, drifting. 그림자만 옷을 입혀주세요. 계단을 올라타는 내 걸음소리 같이 그 말이 타던 번개도 내 귓속 안으로 모처럼 쏟아지겠지. 지붕 달 밑에서 걷어온 빛을 내 혀에 묻고 문도 못 여는 멍한 풀을 씹어먹는 짐승뿐이겠지. 나의 먹먹은 귓살을 얇게 리본처럼 잘라내서 문 겉에 붙여놓으면 밤빛을 먹었던 그 풀밭으로 돌아갈 수 있을까? 입을 벌리면 내 혀에 엉킨 빛도 번개처럼 하늘을 태워버릴 수 있을까? Hoof break is commotion, delirious majuscules, letter stamp my hearing. What is my horse drawing close to nuzzle wet my ears into submission? Long teeth raise my whole soft, red rolling, lips peeled back as an orange can be. My love, in the distance, a hill clothed in grass hides, ears as grains, cut from living, and dead alike, muzzling all of me. What will you make from me, carrying sound and all between your teeth? Isn't love always like this? Wetting the worn shoe of your hoof, omissions recognized in your always coming footfall. How did you speak into a hole I have sharpened myself? Gently your hoof lift to my mouth, as a veneer spoken through. Thank you.
Jimin Seo. So if you'd like, we can take a 5-minute break and then come back and hear Ted Rees. And in the meantime, there's books to buy. Welcome back to the Segue reading series. My name is James Sherry, and this is only in my last reading of the season. Next week we'll have Artist Space do their season, which was, I think, 8 or 9 readings. There's a lot in the calendar, and so I hope to see you then. So for our last reading, I'm pleased to introduce Ted Rees. Roof has published Rees's books, Dog Day Economy, originally written on butcher paper, and Hand Me the Limits, which definitely goes beyond them. For this reading, Ted sent me a couple of pieces he might present. New stuff. In the work on Matthew Shepard, a young man murdered for being gay, he wonders, quote, "What was it to grow up knowing we were so hated?" And further, "So what was it to grow up already dead?" Well, the answer is that this question is followed by one instance of a joyous romp between two young teen boys. These boys, whoa. But before that romp, a short paragraph on the language of what it was like to grow up already dead. It was to have experiences and a language to describe them, but being compelled into silence about them. It was knowing that if you broke that silence, you could lose everything you knew, friends, family, home. It was the fear that the silence would be broken for you by someone else, or that maybe, just maybe, you wanted the silence to be broken and didn't care about losing anything because maybe you wouldn't be dead any longer. The fear of being outed in a hostile situation dominates this short piece. How for the writer, the conflict of writing about something and being at the same time fearful of it being talked about, revealing who you are, what you are, how you are. But Rees is not intimidated. In this piece on Shepard, Leslie Newman wishes, quote, "a world in which everyone could walk this earth free of fear." Rees doesn't stray into this kind of hope, however. Their work presents the wet and dry of language used by gay writers. But they do not agree that, quote, "our gayness connected and made us subject to the same violence that killed Shepard." So what is the poetry of connection? It was only then that I realized I had been reading prose. So let's connect to some prose and give a warm welcome to Ted Rees.
Thanks, James, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all for coming out today. Thanks, Lonely. Okay. So here's a little intro, kind of what I'm about to do. As an entree to my reading today, I want to share a headline from this week with all of you. As Trump takes office, LGBTQ youth are calling crisis hotlines in record numbers. What can we expect? The same thing happened after the 2016 election. A poet friend who is a high school teacher, faculty advisor to his school's Gay Straight Alliance, and father to 2 gay sons, shared that the day after Trump was elected that year, nearly all the kids came into the GSA meeting crying and panicking about conversion therapy. They thought their lives were over. I mention all this because I think it is my responsibility as a 40-year-old gay man who survived the closet in a violently homophobic culture to be an advocate for the queer youth of today. I don't want anyone to have to deal with what I had to deal with growing up, and while there is obviously only so much that I can do, I intend to try to use what gifts I have to share with these kids that they're not alone, and that love is the realest thing. That's why my newest writing project is a more than slight departure from what you might expect from me. I've decided to embark on a journey. I hate that word. Sorry, I just couldn't think of any other way to say it. I've decided to embark on a journey in writing queer YA fiction. I'm doing this because these sorts of books didn't exist when I was growing up, or they were so ghettoized that finding them was next to impossible. Reading contemporary queer YA books like Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, or Different for Boys, I'm filled with conflicting emotions. A buoyant sense that the kids today have better examples of queer stories and relationships, as well as a deep and abiding sadness that my young life could have been different happier, had I had these models that give voice to the fears, confusions, and complications that come from growing up queer in this Christo-fascist, puritanical culture. I'm doing this for myself, yeah, because I want to see what will happen when I do genre thinking, so to speak. But more importantly, I want to do something so that a kid very much like me won't feel so bad about his life and might decide that love is worth staying alive for, because it is. Some of this is very raw, so sorry if I get emotional. Or I'm not apologizing, actually. I might get emotional. I'm going to read the first kind of 4 chapters. As some of you might know, YA books tend to have very short chapters, so they're not, don't worry. You won't be here for hours. First 4 chapters, and then I'm going to skip forward quite a bit, kind of in the plot line, but you won't have much to kind of piece together, I don't think. So. It was 8:45 in the morning when Mom dropped me off in front of Terrace Hall, the art college's main building downtown. As I stepped out of her beat-up gold Honda station wagon, I looked north and could see the back of the William Penn statue on top of City Hall. She rolled down the window after I closed the passenger side door. "Call me when you get to the train station this afternoon. Have fun." She smiled a fake sort of smile, perfected by years working in marketing departments. I was not anticipating having any fun. I waved at her as she pulled away and then looked south, where the sky opened up as downtown skyscrapers tapered into South Philly's squat row homes. I sighed into the summer heat, the air already close, despite the fact that the day was still so new. Mom had signed me up for a week-long summer writing class at the Arts College because she didn't know what to do with me and believed that idle time gave license to young men to get into trouble. Here's how the conversation had gone at dinner the night before when she'd sprung the news on me. "What are you going to do if you're not working a job or doing some kind of activity? You like writing." I'd looked down at my plate of chicken and Greek salad and murmured, "I don't know, read, write letters, bicycle to the bookstore, watch movies." I rarely had any stretches of unscheduled time and was looking forward to not having to do anything for anyone except myself. "That's not enough," she had said, then picked up her fork and spiked some feta and cucumber into her mouth. My dad had stayed silent. I knew better than to argue with her, particularly given recent events. So, because of my inability to challenge Mom in any effective manner, I was leaning against a pillar to the left of the entrance to Terrace Hall, delaying my entry to the building by zoning out on the colorful newsstand 100 feet away, when I saw Dustin and Robin approaching the building. They were in the grade above me at school, and though we had been in some school plays together, we weren't really friends. Truthfully, I'd always been intimidated by them. Robin didn't talk much, but was tall and lithe and seemed constantly distracted by something important, and Dustin had penetrating hazel eyes and an effortless charm to his banter, which ranged all over the place. There were also rumors about Dustin that swirled around school. He'd been dating Kate since they were both freshmen, but last spring, Jackie Trilby reported that she'd seen him making out with Zach Ferry in the park a mile away from campus. A month later, after a rehearsal in the school's grand auditorium, I saw Dustin and Zach head up one of the secret staircases that led to a storage room. I'd left something in a classroom and I was the only one around. Zach must have heard my footsteps because he caught me eyeing them, grinned at me, then winked. I swore I saw him clasp Dustin's hand as they made a turn on a narrow landing. What I saw in the rumors just made Dustin even more intimidating. That he was devastatingly handsome allowed him to approach demigod status, at least in my mind. "Hey, Ben," said Dustin as he approached. Robin didn't say anything. "Hey," I replied raspily, clearing my throat. "Hey, sorry, I just got over bronchitis. Still have some weird frog in my throat sometimes." I had just gotten over bronchitis, but more about that later. Dustin smiled. "I guess you don't want to smoke then," as he pulled out a Newport and lit it up. I watched him blow the smoke from the first puff out through his nostrils. He handed a cigarette to Robin. No, I'm good. I don't really smoke anyway," I replied. I felt deeply uncool and uncomfortable around the two of them, but in an effort to break the brief silence, I asked, "What are you doing here?" Robin spat on the ground and said airily, "Some writing class." Dustin nodded. Same, I said as nonchalantly as possible, though I could suddenly feel my pulse in my temples. A flash of Dustin and Zach holding hands went through my brain. Well, that's cool, said Dustin. I liked your poem in Polyphony. I blushed, but I don't think either Dustin or Robin could tell. Polyphony was our high school's literary magazine. I'd had a dumb poem in it last spring. Thanks, I said, staring at a blackened piece of bubblegum on the ground. I was trying to remember if Dustin had any pieces in it when he answered my question for me. I submitted a few essays, but that asshole Eric Long hates me, so he apparently vetoed them. He sounded bitter and threw his cigarette down on the sidewalk and twisted his sneaker into it. That sucks, I replied. I didn't like Eric Long either. So is life, Robin interjected. Should we go in? He motioned toward the doors to Terrace Hall. I guess so, Dustin replied, then stared at me for a moment. Let's go. I'm not going to write about anything that happened in the classroom after Robin, Dustin, and I went into Terrace Hall. It was pretty unremarkable, really. The teacher was woefully inadequate and unprepared, and at the break for lunch, the three of us went out onto South Broad Street, appreciating the hazy natural light after 3 hours under fluorescent bulbs in a windowless classroom. What bullshit, Dustin said as we emerged. Yeah, no way I'm going back in there, Robin agreed. Totally, I nodded. Dustin looked at me, then looked at Robin. I'm going to try to find someone to buy beer and then meet Zach and Miles, he said. Robin looked unmoored for a second, then said, well, I might just take a walk around the city, maybe go to Rittenhouse and buy a dime. I didn't really know what to say, so I stayed silent. I knew my way around the city and didn't want to go back into the classroom, but felt like the teacher might report our absences if we just left. I didn't want anyone calling my parents. I guess I'll see you in a few weeks, Dustin said, offering his fist for a bump. I awkwardly tapped his hand, then said, yeah, hopefully I'll write more this fall. I'm in the junior-senior writing workshop. Shit, really? So are we. Dustin looked happy for the first time since we came out of the building. And so is Noah. Bosworth? I asked. Yeah. I pictured Noah in my mind's eye, skinny with clear blue eyes and hair that always had cowlicks. We'd also been in some plays together. Cool, I said. Later, waved Dustin. Robin had already drifted down the sidewalk toward the square. I stood there, wondering what to do, and thinking about how I was going to handle being in a year-long workshop with Robin, Dustin, and Noah, 3 of the smartest and most attractive boys in the senior class. I stayed for the rest of the day's session at Terrace Hall. It was miserable. Then got the train home from Suburban Station. I was used to the ride, but still repeated the mnemonic device to remember the stops that my mom had taught me when I was 10 years old. Old maids never wed and have babies. I got off the train at babies. I put a quarter in the payphone outside the station office and called Mom at work. She answered after 2 rings. I'm at the station, I said. All right, she intoned, sounding flustered. Look, I have a lot more work to do here. Do you think you can walk? I rolled my eyes. I knew this was going to happen. Yeah, sure, I said, trying not to sound sarcastic. Thanks, honey. See you tonight. I hung up the phone. The walk home was only 2 miles, but most of it didn't have any sidewalks, so I was forced to glare at suburban moms in minivans careening around me for a lot of it. At least it was high summer and the trees were leafed out, providing some relief from the heat of the late afternoon. Also, I didn't mind walking, really, despite my resentment of my mom's reneging on her end of the deal to pick me up. It gave me time to think. The problem was that all I could think about was Dustin, and then Noah, and then curse myself for only being able to think of Dustin and Noah. It went like that for most of my walk home. I'd think of a story I wanted to write, then think about what Dustin or Noah would think about it, then think about Dustin holding hands with Zach in the stairwell, or Noah and his skimpy track penny, then rebuke myself for only thinking about Dustin and Noah, then think, why was it so wrong? I was thinking only about Dustin and Noah, and then the cycle would just repeat itself. It only ended when I got home and opened the mailbox. Mom's copy of the New Yorker, a bill and some junk for Dad, and a letter from Lee. I tucked it in my back pocket and went in the house. We didn't have central air, so the house was always sweltering in the summer, even with all the lights turned off and the windows open. I ran up to my room at the top of the stairs, got the fan going, stripped down to my briefs, then fished the letter from Lee out of my shorts pocket on the floor. I laid down on my mattress, also on the floor, and started reading. Dear Bendy, God, it's so fucking hot here. I feel like I'm boiling most of the time. I don't want school to start, but I also just want this part of the summer to end. I'm bored, and I miss you. That's also why I want fall to start. I want to see you. We're still going to meet up first weekend of October, right? You can stay here. My parents will be around, but we can escape to the city and see Harrison and Alex and the rest of the crew from Hamilton days. I miss the way you taste and the way your collarbones stick out and sitting on your lap. And I want to sing with you again. Oh, your question in your last letter. I'm not sure. I know I'm into girls too, but I'm mostly into you. Most guys here ignore me, but I don't really care all that much because most people here ignore me. Even in a town like this one, being a short, smart bitch like me doesn't gain many friends. I know you've told me some similar stuff about your school, though I still don't know much about it. I remember you saying that you had some friends, but that it always felt like summer was when you were free. I think that's true for a lot of us. Damn it, Janet, I have to go to work at the deli. Shoot me. Right back. I'll call you soon. I love you and I love the passion fruit. Lee. I folded the letter and threw it in the middle of my bedroom floor. What was I going to do about Lee? Lee and I met at nerd camp. We'd both been going to the camp since we'd first become teenagers, and this past session was our last session before we aged out. We'd known each other in prior years, but we never really hung out before. This final session, though, we ended up in a class on existential philosophy together and really clicked. Eventually, we were making out in our free time outside of class and said we were boyfriend and girlfriend. We even decided to stay together after the session was over. What Lee didn't know was that nearly every night for the 3 weeks of nerd camp, I would sneak out of my room to Harrison's room, and we would sleep together. Mostly, we kissed and cuddled. I would run my fingers through his kinky hair, and I'd stare into his eyes, and he would trace my collarbones with his lips, and we would fall asleep in each other's arms. I loved Harrison, and it was hard for me to admit, but I loved him more than I could ever love Lee. Even harder for me to admit, though, is that I wasn't actually into Lee at all. I wasn't even into girls at all. I got up from the bed and pressed play on my CD boombox without checking what was in the disc slot. It could have been a brilliant career. The first track from Bell and Sebastian's The Boy with the Arab Strap came on. I flopped back down on the bed, closed my eyes, and mouthed along to the lyrics. Do they ever see the real you? I woke up to the sound of a door slamming and Mom yelling up the stairs. Ben, I'm home. I looked at my digital alarm clock. I'd been asleep for more than an hour. I stretched in bed and tugged at the boner in my briefs. I didn't want to get up, especially not to help with dinner or do anything with Mom. I thought about jerking off, but knowing she was probably coming upstairs to check on me made me think twice. She'd been checking on me a lot over the past few weeks. When my parents had picked me up from nerd camp 2 weeks before, there was something different about them. They were distant and didn't seem to be excited to meet any of my friends or say hi to the friends they already knew. Like, they were totally rude to Harrison's mom and stepdad, who were gracious enough to invite me to stay with them in Brooklyn in the fall. It was embarrassing, and I didn't really understand what was going on for a while. They just seemed to want to get me home. Of course, I had other things on my mind. I had aged out of the place where I'd felt most comfortable over the 4 years of my teenage life, and on top of that, I was getting sick, coughing up tons of phlegm and nursing what appeared to be pink eye. I went to my pediatrician and got antibiotics and spent a week sweating it out in bed, wishing Harrison or Lefty or even Lee was there to tell me everything was going to be fine. I dreamed of being in a pile with all of my nerd friends, just radiating love toward one another. The day that the sickness broke, it was a pretty normal summer Thursday. Mom and Dad went to work, and I was tasked with doing some light weeding for pocket money. I didn't really mind doing the work if they were paying me, so I spent a few hours getting every last weed out from the beds. By the time I was done, I had thrown my shirt off and was dripping sweat in the early August heat, flecks of dirt caked onto my arms and torso. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror before I hopped into the shower and thought, not bad. Skinny, but a little sinewy too. While I was showering, I suddenly heard both Mom and Dad talking outside the door. My dad peeked into the steam of the bathroom and said, "Hey, hurry it up, we have an appointment." He sounded like he meant business. "Appointment?" I asked. "Yes, dry off and get into some decent clothes." "Is everything okay?" He didn't respond. Not 5 minutes later, I was in the back seat of the station wagon as my dad took the back roads toward the city. I kept tugging at the collar of my green polo shirt. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Mom replied. They looked at each other a few times during the ride. We didn't say anything else. The waiting room on the 5th floor of the large corporate office building at the city limits didn't have much of a view. Parking lots and big box stores downtown humming in the distance. But apparently, the office we were in was some world-famous psychotherapy center, the Burke Institute. There were shiny metallic letters in a sans serif typeface outside its glass doors. I had never been to therapy before, or at least hadn't known it if I had. As we sat in the waiting room, I could feel my palms sweating as I shoved them into my shorts pockets. After a few long minutes, the three of us were escorted to a small room by a portly, slightly balding man. My parents sat on one love seat, and I sat in my own chair, and the guy, the therapist, I guessed, had his own rolling desk chair. "So, what are we here about today?" And he looked at Mom. She sighed. "Well, as I said on the phone, we wanted to have a session to resolve some concerns we have about you, Ben." And she looked at me. There was moisture in her eyes. My heart rate was going up. I didn't like where this was going. "While you were away at camp, we cleaned out parts of your room and found some things." A sense of panic rose in me. "You went through my stuff?" I exclaimed. "Jesus," I whispered. "Yes, we went through your stuff and found a bunch of things," and that's when her voice took on a weepy edge. She sounded like she was choking a little. I quickly went through an inventory of what they could have found. A few bad paintings I'd done of young men in the nude, some lusty pictures and comments in old nerd camp yearbooks, an iced tea bottle containing purloined whiskey, a half pack of stale Marlboro Reds, my diaries, my limp wrist records, the picture of young Ashton Kutcher in skimpy underwear I'd cut out from Face magazine, a poorly rendered printout of some unknown muscle twink in a jockstrap from hmboys.com. Her weepy voice interrupted my anxious indexing. "There was this painting of a young man," she said, "and then there were these poems in your portfolio for Jacob Joe last year." Jacob Joe had been my freshman English teacher. I couldn't think. My stomach was balling into a knot. I knew the poems she was talking about. "And how did those poems make you feel, Sandy?" asked the therapist. Mom looked down and then looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I gulped. "I felt upset. Ben, you talk about the devil driving me home. I'm not stupid. I know that's us." My father looked grim, his hands clasped together like they were when he was negotiating. I looked at them. "And then there are these poems about kissing another boy," she blubbered out. "Ben, you wrote these poems?" asked the therapist. I nodded while continuing to stare at my mother the whole time. "They're disgusting," my mother exclaimed suddenly. I just can't stand the idea of you being, well, gay." Finishing her thought for her never felt so good and so horrible at the same time. "Yes, you can't know that yet. You aren't mature enough. She was leaning on the edge of the love seat. "Your mother is very upset, Ben," said my father in a grave tone. "Yes, it seems that she's very upset about these poems you wrote, Ben," said the therapist. All three of the adults in the room looked at me as if I had something to answer for. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I imagined I was Big Spoon, holding Harrison in bed, my lips pressed against his scapula, arms slung across his chest. I imagined I was floating outside the window, hovering above the parking lot of the Chili's across the street. I imagined I was over the ocean in an open hot air balloon, watching whitecaps undulate beneath me. "Ben, do you have something you want to say to your parents?" asked the therapist. I looked at him and looked at my parents. Mom's glasses were fogged up and she was dabbing out her nose with a tissue. "Not really," I lied. I thought, you don't want to hear what I have to say, so why should I bother? "Are you sure?" asked the therapist. Mom looked at me then. "Are you a faggot or are you going to give me grandchildren?" she asked, a new anger in her voice. The therapist looked at her, then me. My mouth had fallen open. I turned to the therapist, then to Mom, then back to the therapist. I couldn't believe what she had just said, and I couldn't believe that the therapist was just letting her do this to me. There was a catch in my voice. I could feel my throat constricting and hot tears welling up. "What do you have to say to us, Ben?" said my dad, a little unexpected softness in his voice. I looked at him and tried to telegraph the phrase to him. "You don't want to hear what I have to say, so why should I bother?" I'm very confused," I said, tears slowly rolling down my face. "About your sexuality?" asked the therapist. "I guess," I lied. "Just about everything," which was true enough. I sat with my head in my hands, letting drops fall directly from my eyes onto my lap. Why was I in this small room justifying myself to my parents? Why wasn't this therapist or my dad telling my mom that she couldn't talk to me that way? Why was she talking to me that way? Weren't therapists supposed to, help people, especially gay kids? And for that matter, why was I gay? Why was I so scared of being gay? I realized almost as soon as I asked it of myself that I wasn't confused about the answer to this last question. I knew that I was scared of being gay because I was terrified of my mom and what she would do to me if I actually stood up to her. I put my head up and said, "I don't think I'm actually gay." I was retreating. I felt something inside me wander into a thicket and obscure itself before it died. I felt a piece of light leave me. I felt a new hollow space being carved. I wiped my tears away and looked at my mom, who was staring at me with concern. "I'm not gay, Mom," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "You don't want to hear what I have to say, so why should I bother?" Okay, so now we're skipping ahead about 7 months. And Ben, the character, the protagonist, has become good friends with Noah and Dustin and the crew that you met at the beginning. Dustin had an emergency with Kate, and Patty was having a major freakout about Daria having an affair with Mr. Donaldson, so Noah canceled endgame rehearsal for the day. "You want to come over and drink a beer?" Noah asked. "Sure." We walked to his mom's house, an imposing 4-story mansion in a wild park tucked away in one of the most decrepit and dangerous parts of the city. It was a dissonant experience, cutting across the commuter rail tracks marred with Thunderbird bottles and crack vials and used rigs, emerging onto an open field and this enormous house, bigger than almost any house I had ever been in. We didn't talk much on the walk, but shared a rollie and took in the scenery: row homes, check cashing stores, people laughing outside of delis, gas stations where most of the pumps didn't work. After throwing our stuff down, Noah got us each a Yingling out of the fridge, twisting the caps off and throwing them into the large garbage can at the end of the kitchen's island. "I gotta piss and get a CD upstairs," said Noah, leaving me in the kitchen alone. I listened as he clomped up the house's old steps. I took a sip of the beer. It was still a little weird drinking a beer in the afternoon on a school day. It felt good, though, like something any normal 17-year-old would do. I fished the 2002 issue of Polyphony out of my backpack. It had been stacked in the school's front hall at the end of the day, so I'd seen that I had some pieces in it, but didn't know what else was there. I flipped around a little, then saw something. "Oh shit," I said quietly. I was looking at a page with a short piece of prose I'd submitted anonymously. I hadn't noticed it earlier because my name wasn't on it. In workshop last fall, we'd been given a prompt to write about the morning. But since it wasn't my workshop week, no one had read it beside the Polyphony editors. I read it over again. Wait. Even in that semi-conscious first flicker of the eyelids, I could tell that it was too early. The wispy light of 6 a.m. with its unresolved clouds and waves of smoky blue unobtrusively filtered through the window. I could see the promise of an early morning rainfall on the horizon, for that inimitable scent of precipitation poured lazily into my nostrils as I pulled my knees to my chest and breathed deeply. I thought of the girl absently, echoes of her laugh and the way her arm tugged at my neck reverberated in my memory. I looked at the phone and then cursed myself for the thought of calling her. I always forgot that her sleep was a majestic yet anchored ship. I resigned myself to passing time idly. I began to count the seconds by the rhythm of his breathing next to me. As he exhaled, I could see the contours of his ribcage, the endless valleys and hills of it begging to be run through. As I continued to keep count by the inflations and deflations of his chest, I ran my hand into his forest of kinky, bleached orange curls that whispered hoarsely when touched. His eyelids rapidly fluttered as his breaths and the seconds passed. I had seen her dream, too, with her body splayed across the sidewalk in the shade of mid-afternoon. I had shivered as I watched over her. She'd borrowed my sweater earlier in the day and blanketed herself with it. My fingers became numb as I kept vigil. We were using my blanket on his bed. The subtle smell of warmth enveloped our bodies, the heat leaving him and entering me, flowing out of me into him, an exchange of vitality. Our left feet were touching. The light in the room became defiant. Particles of dust stumbled over the bed and dresser and everything else, a single shaft of light determined to illuminate the integrity and substance of the air. The bed springs creaked. I counted 5 minutes. His lips moved so that it looked like he was singing, and as I waited for the high resonance of his tones, the light atrophied and morning seeped out of the room. I could hear her voice calling me below us. I brushed his skin as I rose in the close darkness. He trembled hazily. For a moment before I left, he opened his eyes to me. Their irises pleaded with me to stay. I exhaled. "I'll wait," I said. "I am waiting." I wasn't sure what to think about it being included. I put the journal down on the table and took another sip of my beer, thinking about why I was so unsure about the piece. It wasn't that I wasn't proud of it. I thought it was pretty good, but that it revealed something about me. It felt weird and vulnerable, and I didn't mind that, and I didn't know why I had submitted it anonymously. I mean, I did know why, but I was starting to not care any longer. That was a new feeling. I'd been sitting there for a few minutes when Noah came back into the kitchen, holding a copy of The Replacement's Tim. "Have you heard this?" Noah asked excitedly. "No," I replied, "only let it be." "Oh, fuck, you're gonna love it." Noah went to the stereo and pressed some buttons, put the CD in, then sat down as the first chords of Hold My Life started. "This mumbling is awesome," I reacted, my eyebrows raised as I peeled the label from my beer. "Yeah, and the chorus is so good," Noah replied. We were silent until the first chorus passed. The lyrics made me feel like I was being cut with something, so I tried to distract myself. "Did you see this?" I said, sliding the copy of Polyphony across the table to where he was sitting. Noah nodded and picked up my copy, flipping through the pages. "I like that they included your story," I said, looking at him hopefully. "Thanks, man, I'm pretty proud of that one," he replied, looking at me with a smile as he continued to riffle through the journal. His eyes were so blue. I wondered whether he knew that I had written Wait. "Your poem is last. That's a spot of honor, Ben," and I blushed a little. It was really cool that they'd put a poem of mine right at the end. "Yeah, it's funny. That's kind of an older poem, but it works," I said, still a little bashful at his praise. Why was I like this? I looked at Noah as he read and Tim played away on the stereo. I thought about the time a few months ago when we'd leaned out the window of his 4th-floor bedroom and smoked a joint, and he'd said to me, "You know, I'm glad we become friends, Ben. You're a good one." Our elbows were touching on the windowsill and our heads were turned toward each other. For a moment, I thought he was going to kiss me, but then he flicked the joint into the darkness and lifted himself from the window frame. Noah's mom came into the kitchen and the reverie left me. "Noah, what, Ma? You're drinking up all of Dave's beer again." Dave was Noah's stepdad. "Oh, sorry, Ma. I was just trying to be hospitable to Ben." "Hi, Ben," said Noah's mom. "Hi, Brenda," I replied. "How are you?" "Oh, you know, just getting ready for a meeting tonight. We're heading down to West Philly to do some organizing." "Cool," I said, and smiled. Noah rolled his eyes. His mom's organizing was a never-ending source of struggle between them. Noah thought it was ridiculous, but Brenda would always shut him down when he argued with her too much. The mansion was dotted with portraits of Trotsky and Black Panthers. We decided to go out on the porch to play with Chuck, the massive 115-pound German Shepherd that was technically Noah's older brother's dog, but lived with Noah and his family most of the time. I rolled a smoke as Noah chucked huge logs for Chuck, who would fetch them and then settle by us and chew them into wet sawdust chunks. "There are a few anonymous pieces, I noticed," Noah said sort of absently. He'd brought the copy of Polyphony out into the yard. I was quiet. "One is obviously by Patty, and another is by a girl, I'm pretty sure. But this one?" And he showed me the page with Wait on it. I didn't say anything. I looked up at the afternoon sunlight filtering through new spring growth on the huge old London plane trees next to the house. I tried not to grin. Come on, man, it's obvious it's you, Noah said, smacking me gently on the shoulder with the journal. I locked eyes with him. He had a sly smile on. Really? Well, to anyone who has read your work before, yeah, said Noah. But who knows if anyone outside of our workshop would know? Yeah, I'm not sure, I mumbled. Well, it's a beautiful piece, Noah said, taking the smoke from between my fingers and putting it to his own lips. Thanks, I said. I felt so sad all of a sudden. Noah exhaled and licked his lips. It's probably for the best that you kept it anonymous, though. You know how people get. Yeah, I murmured. I remembered one of my first days of freshman year. Lev Shani had asked me how I inspected my fingernails in front of a group of other freshman boys, and I'd put my hands out like I was showing off a beautiful ring. He didn't even say anything to me, just went back to his crew and said, "You see? Total fag." They had all laughed. I was left standing there with my hand out, not understanding what was going on. How did Lev know? And why did Noah keep hanging out with me? Thanks so much.
Okay, that concludes this season of the Segue reading series. Thank you all for coming out. Next week, we're going to continue with a new season of the Segue reading series hosted by Stella Silman and Jay Sanders of Artist Space. February 1st, Shelley Hirsch and Maggie Lee. Another programming thing that we want to tell you about is that Inner Poets Theater, which is a section of the Segue Foundation, is presenting a reading of my play about Hart Crane called Voyages. Tickets are on sale now. It's a one-night only event. It's a stack cast. It's going to be at Torn Page in Chelsea, February 3rd. Check out Segue Social for more details. And do you have anything to say to conclude the season?
Thank you all for coming, and come back next week to see Jay and Stella's series.
All right. Thank you.